Unison is brought to you by the Young Committee of the International Federation for Choral Music.
So María Guinand is a choral and orchestral conductor, college professor, and leader of national and international choral projects who has specialized in Latin American choral music of the 20th and 21st centuries. She is frequently invited as a guest conductor, adjudicator, jury member, and lecturer of choral music in the USA, Canada, Latin America, Europe, Asia, and Oceania, and has premiered many new works. She is currently the artistic director of the Fundación Schola Cantorum de Venezuela. Among her responsibilities, she has been associated with the Universidad, Simón, Bolívar, and El Sistema, Venezuela, and is currently vice president of the International Federation for Choral Music. She has been the recipient of several international awards, such as the Robert Edler Prize for Choral Music, the Helmuth Rilling Prize, the Life Achievement Award by the International Federation for Choral Music, and the Honorary Doctorate of the Metropolitan University, Caracas, Venezuela. I think this is going to be a really interesting conversation, and I'm so excited to chat with you, especially about you working with young people in the university setting, and also with social projects that you have completed in your home country. And so I'm really excited to chat with you today. We are so excited for you to be with us.
Thank you very much for the invitation to be in this podcast. I love to talk to young people like you are, because my work all my life has been with people of your age. And I think it has given me so much joy and insight in my work. So I love to do this. Thank you very much for inviting me.
Thank you, Maria. Yeah, we are so excited for this opportunity to talk with you.
Well, let's get started here. Sophia, do you want to ask that first question?
Yeah, of course. So, Maria, how did you get started as a young conductor?
Well, as a young conductor, really, I started when I was around perhaps 17 years old. I had already been studying music in my music school and piano. And my piano teacher and my main mentor here in Venezuela was Alberto Grau. And he really started in the early 70s. He created a first group, a first class of choral conductors that were either his pupils or young musicians who were studying in the music school. There was no choral conducting degree in my country, and the choral movement was starting to grow, and there was a lot of enthusiasm in this country in the early 70s, in the late 60s, early 70s. The country was living through a first important democratic period, and there were resources coming from the oil industry. There were many projects, and there was a lot of enthusiasm in the country to build new things. So Alberto created the first class of choral conductors, young, we were all very young, and he will give us classes of 4 hours, not only of conducting, but of analysis, music, repertoire, phenomenology. He had studied conducting, orchestral and choral conducting with Gonzalo Castellanos here in Venezuela, but also he went to the classes of Sergio Celibidache in Italy. And he had already been as a conductor, working with choirs for many years with older conductors here in Venezuela, but he was very a mind that wanted to discover new things, and a restless mind. And he had already been in Europe for Europa Cantat or in ACDA conventions, and he was really blown away by the major gatherings of choirs, competitions, festivals. So he opened for us those windows in that first class. That's how I started. And my first choir, because all those who were there, we were asked to create a choir anywhere. So I went to the school where I was finishing my high school, and there was no choir there. And I said, well, I want to create a choir in this school. And I was accepted, the idea what came across. I wasn't paid anything. I could just have a choir, and it was very beautiful. It was a equal voices choir, because I went to a nuns school, and it was only women in that school. But it was beautiful to start with equal voices, and the choir was beautifully enthusiastic. And the first time I could hear three parts sounding together in tune, in time, it was like a miracle in my life. I couldn't believe it was possible for me to do that.
Well, it's so relieving to hear that you had experience at such a young age. And I think that a lot of young conductors get very excited when their groups can start singing in three parts. 'Cause sometimes that can be a huge challenge. And so to hear you've done that at age 17 and started a group, it tells a lot about what young people are capable of.
Of
And
course.
so yeah. I'm curious as to what are the choral traditions that are unique to your region, and what makes your region unique?
Well, I think in Venezuela, we had a very rich choral tradition in the 20th century, because in the early 30s, a very well-known musician in Venezuela, that Venezuela was a small country, very rural country at that time, not open at all to the major world. He created the first mixed choir that was about to become a very important organization in the 20th century. We have to remember that in Latin America, we had, during the colonial days, 16th, 17th, 18th century, there was a long background of choral and orchestral music related to the styles of Europe. But Venezuela was not one of the main capitals, was not one of the main viceroyalties. So we were a general captaincy, and we only had here a small school of composers at the end of the 18th century that was called Escuela de Chacao, and they wrote beautiful sacred music, and there should have been some choirs there. There was music education in the country, but really the 20th century with Vicente Emilio Sojo was the beginning of a movement that will lead to a major choral development. He created the Orfeón Lamas, and the main objective of this choir was either to sing the music of those composers from the 17th century, 18th century that had been brought to life, that was being brought to life from archives, or to sing the music by his pupils. He was a composition teacher, and he had around him young composers writing music, especially choral music. He was a very good teacher of choral composing, and he loved Spanish poetry. So the first tradition here was to really sing the music that was newly composed in the 30s, 40s, 50s by our composers, in the music that had been composed in the 17th, 18th century by our composers. Some music that we got from Europe, from Pergolesi, for instance, or some Spanish Renaissance music, Spanish madrigals, or also sacred music from Tomás Luis de Victoria, Palestrina. That was, let's say, academically what the choirs were singing. But very early too, in the 50s, there was another choral conductor, a musician called Ángel Sauce, and he started to choralize in a very beautiful way popular music, music coming from popular traditions, songs that were not in the choir repertoire, that were more sung, in parties, in the streets, in festivities, and he started choralizing them. And that was a great move, because then the music that comes from popular and folk roots also came into our repertoire in a very beautiful and integrated way with the music that we had from other traditions.
Yeah, so important. This idea of making music by young composers of the country and popular and folkloric music is very well known that in all Latin America, that Venezuela has like a lot of excellent choirs, choral music written by Venezuelan composers. So I think it's very important all this idea to make the choir singing like their own repertoire. Yes.
Yes, and it happened with young people. All these people were very young at that time. They all were in their 20s, in their 30s. They were very enthusiastic. They loved what they're doing, and they had future. They imagined to create things. We were creating from scratch. When I came into the picture, it was later on, because after my start with Alberto Grau, studying here, I had the opportunity to go to England and do there my training as a musician, not only choral conductor, but as a musician. I was studying all the subjects. I was studying piano, singing, but I was also studying composition, musicology. So I did many subjects. And when I arrived in my country, and I was 23 years old, with my first degree, my bachelor's degree, I had been given the opportunity to continue my master's degree in the English University as an external student. There was no music in the universities, taught in the universities in Venezuela, only in the conservatories. And my father wanted us to have university degrees. My father was we were 7 children and everybody has to study, no matter what you wanted, but you need to go to university. So I had that opportunity. And when I came back at 23, I was given so many jobs. I was offered, to teach in the music schools, in the conservatories, to create choirs, because there was such a need of young people to work. But we had to, I say it in Spanish, picar piedra. That means break stones. I don't know, is that expression in English correct? We had to start from scratch. How would you say that? When I say
people say starting from the bottom. Starting
from the bottom. There was nothing for I had studied so much and I had conducted beautiful choirs in England and all that, but I could not expect to come to Venezuela and have a structure where the maestro was going to sit and start. No. I was giving empty land. Okay, plant your crops. What do you want to plant here? What do you want to do here? And go on. And today, in my age, after 48 years of work, I have to say that was the best thing that could happen to me in my life. To have to build, to start from the bottom, not once, many times, in different places, and work always with young people that were very open and willing to learn, and transform my choral conducting profession into a teaching profession. I was always teaching, having something to say about the music, about the texts, about the styles, about life, about why are we doing this? When are we going to perform this and where? What does it matter to do this concert, in a big theater, for which audience, or does it matter that we do it in a small church? Or are we in the middle of riots and we have to keep singing and we have to go to the churches and sing for the people who get there? Or shall we meet in small groups in our homes and keep singing? So all my life, in a country with so many upheavals like my country, we have had to be very creative, but always very enthusiastic, because life is only one, and you cannot wait that things get better for you to start working. You are the one who makes things better.
Yeah, it's so true. And what a great challenge it is to start from nothing, to build up everything. Also, we know that in Latin America it's kind of difficult sometimes to build like these things because we don't have always the resource and the money and all that kind of things. But your testimony is so inspiring, but because it's saying that no matter how, you need to do it. Yes. Um, and talking about these things that you have worked in, what is Schola Cantorum of Venezuela? Can you tell us more about your work there?
Well, the Schola Cantorum of Venezuela is today is a foundation that is 57 years old. Alberto Grau, my husband, founded a choir, a small chamber choir, in 1967. And this choir initially got together because they were very good friends in the music school, and they had to sing in a wedding. So they got together and they sang, and it was so successful that they say, "Wait, why don't we become a choir?" So they started a choir. They had nothing. They didn't even have a place to rehearse. So he started that. I wasn't there yet. I was still younger, because it was a choir more of older people than I was at that age. I came into the Schola Cantorum in 1976, almost 9 years after it was created. But the Schola Cantorum in its first years was a very important group because it was already singing repertoires that were new for the, let's say, for the scene of Venezuelan choral music. They were singing, for instance, French music, English music, other Renaissance composers. Of course, they were singing Johann Sebastian Bach. They were bringing other repertoires that were not in the sphere of action. And when I came back, and I came from England, I was given the responsibility to be the sub-director of the Schola Cantorum, of the choir. But at that time already, the Schola had grown. It had won a very important prize, the first prize in the competition Guido d'Arezzo, in 1974. This year, we're celebrating 50th anniversary of this prize. We have 2 major concerts coming up in 3 weeks with another Schola Cantorum, with a Schola Cantorum of young people who are between 23 and 26, the same age of those that 50 years ago won that prize and made that huge contribution to our country. So we hope that the young people today continue to contribute. So the Fundación has grown to educate choral conductors, to create small children choir in the favelas, in the barrios, in the poor areas, in poor schools that have no opportunity to sing. We created also youth scholars and some women young choirs. So we developed a whole network of choirs that work under a methodology that has been developed over the years with Alberto Grau as a leading composer also. He's a leading composer of a whole new generation of composers, the same way he was a pupil of Soho, and he has created new music, new repertoires, and we keep inventing, we keep opening new ideas, new roads. So the Schola Cantorum Fundación is an organization also that impacted very much the musical life in the country for many years, opening workshops, bringing to the country festivals and masters when the country was in a better situation. We, for many years, for more than 35 years, we were the choral arm of El Sistema. We worked together with El Sistema as the choral part. Today, El Sistema has its own choral program. And here we are, 57 years to finish, 50 years of Arezzo, heading towards our 60th anniversary. And you can go into our webpage, our YouTube channel, and which is called Raya Schola, Schola. You can put it on them. And then you can see many recordings of our history, of our groups, of what we are doing. And at the moment, with the Schola mixed choir, I am very interested in working with the choreographers and to learn the music by heart and have body expression and get the young people interested not only in singing, but also in moving, but not always moving, which means dance, because it can mean only, something very ethereal. We have done different projects, different programs. We've just been with a group of them in the Edinburgh International Music Festival this summer. And we presented a program that was in the theme of the festival, Rituals That Unite Us, from music from the 20th century of the Americas, from all kinds of rituals and ideas and prayers and sufferings and joys. And it was all accompanied by also scene. So the Schola Cantorum really has been like a light, like a beam. You say a beam, faro. How do you say? Where the boats, what the boats see on the shore.
A lighthouse.
A lighthouse, yes, because we want to lead always new ways. We have opened many international relations. We have been in innumerable choral festivals, events, competitions. We have premiered many works. So the life of the Fundación Schola Cantorum, that has been our life, is very rich and is very alive and creative.
Enjoying the podcast? Why not check out what else IFCM is up to? Follow IFCM on Instagram or Facebook, or visit ifcm.net to hear about upcoming events and projects and to find a vast array of choral music resources.
Yeah, and I think this ties a little bit into what you said about having to keep going and build things up on your own. The fact that 20-something-year-olds built an organization that turned into a choral ecosystem and is the heartbeat is so, so inspiring. Because sometimes, in our 20s, we think that some things are impossible. But if we just do the work, it sounds like it'll come to fruition.
Of course, sometimes I get some young people saying, well, I like to be like you are now, freelancing and doing all this. And I say, listen, this I can do after 48 years of starting from the bottom. Being in my country, I had to work here from morning to night, 7 days a week. There was sometimes for me, there were no holidays. There was no way. I had my job at the university teaching non-musicians, because my students were non-musicians in college, and then in the morning, and that gave me a salary, a possibility to live on, because music never paid very well. So in the afternoon, I went to the Schola Cantorum to teach musicians and to create choirs, and that we didn't have much money. We had to find the money. We had to create the structure, and that took a lot of work. And takes still today. I am retired from the university, from my teaching. I can now freelance, but today I'm still the one who is thinking of how are we going to raise the money to keep our organization going. And that's something you have to do every day. I mean, you wake up in the morning and you have to make the effort to get out of bed. I mean, you have to start again every day. And that's life, but that's beautiful. I mean, there's no way that you can say, okay, now everything is done and everything will continue nothing will continue if there is no energy behind it. Somebody has to push. But for me, what is beautiful is to teach young people come with me, see what I'm doing. How do I do with this? And continue and do it. And then, be happy when they are successful and when they get to good results and when they find themselves that they are happy with what they're doing. Everything has a time in life, Everything you plant, you have to take care of your crops. You have to beware of the challenges while your crop is growing. Too much rain, too little rain, ice, birds, whatever. And then when time comes that you can gather your crop, then you can take it. Then it's time. And then you can show it. But then you have to start again. And not every year is good. Some years are better. But then you have to say, okay, we did it. Life will give us another opportunity.
Yeah, I think back to when I was studying in university and how I had a teacher that really cared and was invested in me. And so I'm interested, you brought it up a little bit when you were chatting about planting the crops and keeping to them. I'm interested to hear about your experience as a university teacher and what it was like teaching young people in that setting.
It was amazing. I loved it. And especially because my class, I had 3 classes of 40 students who were all scientists, engineers, computer science. They were not musicians, but they had to take extra credits in other subjects. And music was one of them. So I had to teach them some fundamentals of music. And then I love to teach them how to listen to music and how to appreciate music. And in those days, 3 hours, my class, 3 hours of the class, which is a huge amount of time. No computers, no nothing. You just had cassettes, the cassettes, yeah? DVDs to show some images. You had to use some retro projector with, and then you have to use the board. And then you have to give papers to the students to read. But your class had to be very interesting and going. And I had 40 students in every class. And I have to say that sometimes I said, okay, another class today. But then when I came out, I was full of energy, of love. And I meet today some of these students. Sometimes I walk into an elevator and somebody say, hey, Professor Guinand, I am working here as a computer engineer, and I was your pupil. I remember your classes, and because of that, I love music and all that. And that was beautiful. Also, my choir at the university was a non-audition choir. My students came wanting to sing. That's all. And I told them, okay, just speak. You may be tenor, you may be soprano. Sit down and let's start. And I gave them, from the very beginning, I gave them a sheet, a score. And I say, okay. And then they were like, what do we do with this? Okay, I will teach you how to do this. And they were learning. And my university choir sang works as difficult as Bach B minor Mass. And it's beautiful because today, that choir was started by Alberto Grau in the 1970, and then I joined, and we had like 2 choirs, and then they came together. More than 50 years have gone by. The country has turned in what it has turned. More than 8 million Venezuelans are not living here anymore, and most of those generations are not here. But they have created an international organization themselves to gather and meet. They meet or gather through Zoom, but we also have organized gatherings, presence gatherings, where we create a choir. We say, okay, how many sopranos do we have? How many tenors? Who is coming? Everybody pays its own way. we give them a repertoire that we know that they will remember because it was very well learned. And then we have already gathered 3 times. Last time was this past April. We gathered in FIU in Miami. We had 60 singers coming from all over the world, from Australia to Patagonia. They joined for 5 days and rehearse, and we have a full concert. And we share that with 3 other choirs and a major choral symphonic work. So these people who were at the university 50 years ago are today joined because of music. And they are willing to continue finding each other to sing together. And for us, this is the most rewarding moment. It's been very beautiful. It's been really very nice. And because now it's generations, somebody who is now 70 will join in the university with somebody who is 50, 40, 30, 20. And this is what life is about.
So important that how important is the work teaching young people now? I've been a university teacher for a year and a half now, and I've realized what an impact one can have as a teacher in their lives. It's so important to be a good teacher, but not only to teach like the essential things of music and all that kind of things, but also like a human being, like being a good person and how to be like a good person in society. And speaking on that, you have worked building programs that relate music to social action, yes? Why
Yeah.
is this relation important? What are the challenges and what have been the results of these programs over the years?
Well, I think that music is such an important tool to bring about the beauty of your soul, that you can use music as a tool to integrate into society people, especially children and young people who have less opportunities, to create for them a space of enjoyment, a space of work, of self autoestima, self-esteem, because they earn the applause of the audience or the presence on a stage because of their hard work, because of the love for music. And also through music, you can open up windows of beauty. And beauty is something eternal, it has no end. You can dream. So no matter if your reality in your little house, in your poor favela, if your everyday reality is difficult, but when you come into the music class or into the moment of your choir, you can be transported to another reality. And it's not an illusion, it's a reality. And it's a reality that you can aim, you can build. What have been the results? We have done this work in Venezuela and during more than 17 years in many countries of Latin America with the Bank of Development. And the result has been empowered human beings, not professional musicians as such, but empowered human beings that have discovered that they have the talent, the possibility, the will, and the aim to be different, to have a role, to play a role in life, to play a role in their communities, to be, to create a family, to develop, in higher levels of education, in higher levels of spirituality. And I have countless examples that I can give you of children that were perhaps in a very, very poor favela with perhaps hopeless lives, that you will think this child will be a drug dealer in 10 years and that's it. And they became beautiful teachers or administrators or engineers or musicians. So this work empowers the human soul and gives hope. It's so important.
Absolutely. And, I think back to when I was young, I took piano lessons in the lobby of an auto body shop. And it just having something to hold on to and have hope for is so, so, so important. And I totally, totally agree that it's an agent of social change, and it really can inspire people that are going through extremely challenging situations. And
Yeah.
so your experience and background really resonates with my spirit on that one. I'm curious about your advice for people who are young people wanting to be conductors, composers, or choral leaders. Just any general advice you might have for them.
I think what is very important is that you discover in life gradually what you want to do. But if you have already like a drive in yourself, I mean, if you have a tendency that you want to be really teacher, if you like to address people and say things, then follow your path. If you feel that you are more an organizer, that you like to serve, preparing, okay, do that. If you want to be a conductor and you dream to conduct the most beautiful and professional choirs in the world, you need to go through stages and be able to know how to build, how to create the building. You cannot expect somebody else to do the job for you, and then you will arrive there and just conduct. So my advice is find a space that allows you to develop, to work, when you can be where you can be creative, and gradually open up to your community, small community, families, then major community. Be in contact with others that are like you, like similar others that are doing the same you are doing. Be part of the organizations of IFCM, of ACDA, of Europa Cantat. Go to Congress, go to the online podcasts, cafes, use this technology to hear, to know, to take ideas. Because I think the young people today have many more tools to communicate, to learn, and to gather information than we had. We had to be very, how did I get a score? I was in Venezuela. You had to ask the mail to bring it to your home, and it could take a month. The day the fax was invented, it was, wow, I can get now, but then the scores were manuscripts, and there was no, but the days we had better copyists doing nicer scores for us. It was beautiful. Today you just push a button and you find one score, 5 versions, you get the shop sends it and you print it at your home, or you have a tablet, you don't have to print it. Perhaps when we have too much, we don't know where to start. That may be true too, but that's why then you have to create your plan, and do not think you are going to climb the Everest in one go. If you want to be a mountaineer and one day you want to climb the Everest, then start by a small mountain and then keep going. But keep going. And if one day you wake up and you say, oh, no, today I'm not going. No, you have to go.
Yeah, I kept thinking about this thing you mentioned about getting involved, being part of organizations, and finding your place to develop yourself. It's so important to be part of organizations and to be in contact with people that do the same thing as you. I mean, being in contact with conductors, with composers, and to learn with them and learning from your colleagues. It's so important that I think that is a great way for young people to get involved and gain experience, right?
It's essential. I mean, you don't have to think that everything is done. Sometimes we think, well, now everything is invented, everything is done, what I'm going to do. I mean, listen, nature is renovating itself every day. I mean, we cannot say, okay, trees are there and they are there. No, if there is nobody planting a tree, if there is nobody watering a tree or flowers, there will be no trees. So choirs, choral music, have to be invented again every day.
Absolutely. And, I think there's so many people to meet, places to go, and things to different choral traditions to hear. And so I think once you start getting comfortable is when there might be a problem, because there's always stuff happening. And I agree with you what you said about how it can kind of be a lot at first now that we have the internet. Where do I begin? Where do I start? And I'm curious about how you started. In one way, what was the first concert you conducted, if you remember, and who was your mentor?
Well, I mean, if I go back to my 17-year-old choir, when I was at that time, I think I had like 4 songs. And these 4 songs, I had one Renaissance song, which was a villancico called Por la Puente Juana by Juan de la Encina. I love that villancico. I had a Venezuelan madrigal by Eduardo Plaza called Nocturno. And then I had 2 popular songs from Venezuela. One is a merengue called La Culebra, the Snake, and the other one was a valse that was called Brisas del Torbes. Those were the first 4 pieces I conducted. I was so happy. After that, I mean, I did not start my first concert doing a Brahms motet. No. I think for me, the most beautiful thing is to conduct a choir with the music that is possible for them. But it has to be beautiful. It has to be perfect. It has to be neat. I don't need to do something extremely difficult to impress anybody. No. But of course, you want to conduct other things. You want to do, and then you realize how much you have to study, work, and understand the music that you think you understand in order to do it well. So you have to be very intelligent in your programming, in the setting, in what your choir are able to do, and all that.
Are you a young choral conductor, singer, or manager? Consider registering for IFCM's next Young program. The Young program provides young choral leaders with opportunities to learn, grow, and make a meaningful contribution to the choral community. Visit ifcm.net and find the Young program page for more information.
Absolutely. And so now we have a couple of questions that are going to be quick fire questions for you. And so starting off, who is your favorite composer or conductor or musician?
Composer Johann Sebastian Bach. And then conductor, I have many conductors I admire, both orchestral and choral conductors from whom I learned very much. I admire very much Helmuth Rilling, but also Alberto Grau. and Eric Erickson. Those were, for me, three big lights in my life.
What is your favorite piece?
Of the whole repertoire of choral music?
Yes. It's a hard question, I know.
The piece that I would love to hear over and over again is Bach B minor Mass.
A wonderful choice. If you could have dinner with any musician, whether they are here with us on earth or not, who would it be?
Well, I love to meet Bach, Johann Sebastian Bach. I love to meet him. I love also to meet Mateo Flecha because he must have been very funny. From the Spanish.
With their ensaladas. How do you do that? And what is your favorite language to sing in?
I love Latin. Latin is a beautiful language to learn to sing. It has many nuances, but it has straight vowels and clear consonants. I like Latin.
What is the best venue to sing in?
Wow, there are so many beautiful venues I have had the opportunity to sing in. But I have to say that some of the venues that I remember with much joy were the Philharmonic Hall in Taipei. I love that hall. We sang also in the Avery Fisher Hall in New York. And we have a small hall here in Venezuela in our Teresa Carreño, which is the Sala Jose Felix Rivas. It's a small hall of about 500 seats. It's a beautiful hall too.
I love that. Well, thank you so much for chatting with us. I know that I've come from this conversation, and I'm sure Sophia can agree, learning so much about who you are as a human, but also about being a young conductor and getting to the work and the good work too, and not just working on ourselves, but working on the community that we're in too. And I think that's a big part of what we do as choral musicians, is that we can spend time just working on our conducting, but it's also important to work on the people around us.
And I think to work with your communities gives a lot of sense to your work and to your presence on earth. You know, what am I doing and how can I impact the life of those who are around me? I think that's very important.
Perfect. Thank you
Muchas
so much,
gracias.
Maria. Muchas gracias. Thank you for being
Many thanks
here.
to both of you, and best of luck, and hope that this idea of the podcast will be very successful.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for all the people that are listening to us. We are Unison, the IFCM Young Podcast. We are very excited. Thank you very much for being here.
To support the work of IFCM, consider becoming a member or making a donation. Visit ifcm.net. Any support helps IFCM's volunteers connect the choral world. That was Unison, brought to you by the Young Committee of the International Federation for Choral Music. If you have any feedback or ideas for the podcast, you can email us at young@ifcm.net. Thank you to our guest for their time, and thank you to you for listening.